Good morning, Dan and Amy. So we've been covering this story for a couple of weeks at least now, and I've been covering it in my paper, northcooknews.com. The story of the New Trier racist seminar. It's my description of it. Because,
what's it really called?
Because it's accurate.
It's the...
I don't know. New Trier race seminar or something, civil rights something.
No, Day of Civil Rights.
Yeah, whatever. It's whatever. It's an Orwellian bull jive title. I went to the New Trier board meeting that was, 500, 600, 700 people, jammed auditorium Monday night, as I've described earlier in the week. And among those who addressed the school board about the seminar as it's currently constituted was our friend, Pastor Corey Brooks of New Beginnings Church on the south side of Chicago. And he may be too polite to say this, but I don't suffer that infirmity, so I'll tell you what happened. Corey Brooks got up there and gave a very reasonable perspective. You know, as an African-American pastor on the south side that is actually dealing with the problems these leftist Champagne socialists in New Trier are pretending to deal with, he actually is dealing with them on a daily basis, trying to increase the peace and help people in need. And so he started off, he invoked the observations of Dr. King, and he went on to talk about black success stories, because one of the arguments of those who oppose the seminar as it's currently constituted is that they don't suggest that the seminar not go on at all. In fact, you can have all the left-wing cranks that you want, New Trier High School. You can have Monica Trinidad do a session on the seminar day that accuses Chicago cops of being urban terrorists committing genocide. That's a real thing, by the way. Go ahead. Did you hear that, police officers? That's at New Trier High School. All of your white Champagne socialists at New Trier High School. Real thing. They're teaching children. But don't do it to the exclusion of other voices, including Corey Brooks. And we've talked to Robert Blackwell, one of the few actual African-American parents of a New Trier student. He opposed the seminar for the same reason. Expand speech, more perspectives from people with the standing to offer a perspective, not fewer perspectives. Well, that was rejected by the school board. So the parents of New Trier, which was the group of parents that stood up against this racial indoctrination, this politicization of race, which is exactly what's happening, despite what this simp of a school board president named Greg Robitaille said. It's total politicization. That's all it is. So those parents who stood up have joined with Pastor Corey Brooks, who's also the CEO of Project Hood, projecthood.org, which deals with poverty. And that was the message that Corey Brooks delivered. These challenges are about poverty, specifically race secondarily. Have joined together to do a conversation with Pastor Corey Brooks this coming Sunday, February 26th, 4:30 p.m. at the Malik Rod, pronounce that right, Community Center, 1041 Ridge in Wilmette. And we're pleased to be joined with a preview of that conversation with the aforesaid Pastor Corey Brooks. Corey, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on this morning, Dan. I appreciate being on your show.
So, Corey, what was your feeling in terms of your treatment at New Trier on Monday night at the board meeting after you addressed the school board?
Well, it was kind of mixed. I was well received by a great deal of people, but there was a small group who had some snickers by, especially when I mentioned a quote by Justice Thomas. And when I mentioned that, some individuals kind of snickered. But other than that, it was received well, and I'm hoping that the New Trier School Board will understand that, like you said, these are parents who they're not wanting. It's not that they don't want the day to happen. They just want the day to be more balanced, and I can understand that, because they're giving a racial view of blacks that's far left, and we are more than just being far left people.
Well, we spoke with one parent who said the kids at New Trier wanted to have this Civil Rights Day because they don't interact with a lot of minorities, because there aren't any minorities at their school. Do you understand why they wanted to have the Civil Rights Action Day?
Yeah, and I understand that, and that's no problem. The only problem is when you only present one view of people and you're proclaiming that you're open-minded, but you're really not being open-minded. That's where it's so lopsided. And I think if they really want to teach their kids to be critical thinkers, then don't just present them with a leftist view. Present them with the fact that there are some African Americans who are conservative and African Americans who are compassionate, and present that. And like Dan was saying earlier, I believe that we got to get beyond the racial thing, and we got to get to a silver thing, because it's not about civil rights, it's about civil rights. And I think what we're dealing with is not racial issues, but poverty issues. And I think if we can teach that and balance it with the discussion of race, I think things would be a lot better.
So you can tell he's a pastor. It's not civil rights, it's silver rights. You see, exactly. They always have these constructs that are so catchy. So, Corey, develop that a little bit more, because I know that was the thrust of your remarks to the school board is it's about poverty and, by extension, opportunity that people can access to lift themselves out of poverty. It's not so much about race, although, of course, poverty disproportionately negatively impacts minorities and blacks in particular. But develop that a little bit more, particularly in conjunction with what you do with Project Hood.
Well, we believe that one of the reasons why we're having so much violence in the inner cities is because we're dealing with some serious economic issues. And we designed Project Hood to go to fight that issue of violence, dealing with education, economic, social, and spiritual issues. Race is not the issue for us. It was the issue for us is dealing with these problems holistically and dealing with them in a compassionate way. So we designed this program called Project Hood, and I'm glad that I'm going to be discussing it with the parents in Wilmette and telling them about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. But we try to do it in a well-balanced way, because we believe that regardless of color, people are facing these issues, and most of them stem from economic issues.
You know what? I note that the lack of solutions coming from the left too, and the proponents of this seminar as it's constituted with just one point of view. So, for example, right now, here's a topic for seminar day. Right now, you have Tim Scott, black Republican senator from South Carolina, of course, introduced legislation aimed at providing tax credits to investors who make investments in essentially underperforming neighborhoods, if you will.
Right.
And so it's a way to, rather than government doing these enterprise zones, it's a way to incentivize people to take a look at their marginal investment dollar, to take a look at blighted neighborhoods and say, is there an opportunity here? And it may be worth me taking a risk that I wouldn't otherwise take because of this tax benefit I'm going to derive. And so that could be something that's done at the state or the city level as well. But rather than talking about substantive ideas that give people opportunity and access to capital, which is access to opportunity, we're talking about, who likes black people more and who hates white people more.
Exactly. And I think that Tim Scott is right on point. I think that is the issue that we need to be dealing with in this day and time. I mean, after all, not to say that we don't have racial problems. I'm not that ignorant to say that. But people need to understand we just had an African-American president for the last 8 years. And so I believe that we've moved away from a lot of race issues. And one of the things that people have to understand is that there are people who are making money off of, I call them race pimps. Yeah. They make money and they keep their jobs by not promoting solutions, but by continuing to promote our grievances with other races so that they can keep their jobs. And that's just the way that it is. I think that we have to move toward solutions. We have to move toward people being able to reconcile their relationships with other people in a way that is meaningful to all of humanity.
Pastor Corey Brooks, I wanted to ask you a personal question. When did you become a Republican? Like, when did you realize that the Democratic Party was failing you and people in your community?
At 20 years old, and I went to Ball State University, and my major, I have a bachelor's of science in political science. And when I really started looking at things from the political science perspective, I started to really see the damage that just our African Americans were experiencing just by proclaiming to be Democrats. And the fact that we were putting all of our eggs in one basket, I thought that at that time, at 20 years old, that was not good. And as a result, since that time, I've seen the damage and that thought has caused our neighborhoods, that thought has caused so many people. And so since 20 years old, I've been a Republican, and I've always been conservative. But I tell people, too, I'm conservative, but I'm also compassionate. And I think one of the main things is that a lot of people think that if you're conservative, then for some reason you're not a compassionate person, and that's just not true.
Yeah, that's right. And it's amazing. It's amazing that Ball State could produce a liberal crank like David Letterman and a thoughtful conservative young man like Corey Brooks.
Yeah, he could have took political science.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Corey. Parents of New Trier presenting a conversation with Pastor Corey Brooks, CEO of Project Tua, the pastor at New Beginnings Church on the South Side. It's this Sunday, 4:30 to 6. A community center, Malik Rod or something, whatever. Community center at 1041 Ridge Road in Wilmette. Go to parentsofnewtrier.org for details on how to attend and to sign up because space is limited. Community Center, 1041 Ridge Road, this Sunday, 4:30 p.m., parentsofnewtrier.org. Pastor Brooks, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate being on your show.
All right, have a good weekend.
All right.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.